Welcome back to Old School Sports and our Out of the Park Baseball 24 playthrough of the Cincinnati Reds. And just want to start off by thanking all of our viewers, all of our subscribers, all of our commenters. Over the weekend, we passed 1,000 subscribers, and it was our goal to get to that figure by the end of this year. So obviously, we've done it well ahead of time, 7.5 months ahead of our goal. Can't thank everyone who watches this channel and subscribes to the channel and comments on our videos and likes our videos and helps get the word out about what we're doing here out to more people. So thanks so much for watching. And with that, we'll get into the episode. Our Cincinnati Reds are the 2026 World Series champions. Clinched the World Series 4-2 against the Seattle Mariners yesterday in response to a question from Three Quarters Badger. Not really a question, more of a comment, just asking us to kind of review how the playoffs went. It was a very interesting path for our team. You can see the last 3 games here in the month of November that clinched the World Series. And then you can see the playoff series against Atlanta, San Diego, and Seattle. We were 11-5 in the playoffs, but we only outscored our opponents 57-48. So we were scoring a little over 3.5 runs a game while allowing 3 runs a game. So our offense was not nearly as good as it was during the regular season, but our pitching did remain dominant. And we also won a lot of close games. We were 9-2 in the playoffs in 1-run and 2-run games. We had 3 shutouts, 3 games in which we allowed 1 run, and 1 game in which we allowed 2 runs. So although our offense was not exceptional, our pitching certainly was in the playoffs. And because of that, we are the champions. And with that championship here in the 4th season of this mini-series with the Cincinnati Reds, I think it's going to be time for us to move on. We have been playing a bit over the weekend with the latest version of OOTP 24, and I'm pretty convinced that we can get our long-term playthrough going. So we are going to be working on getting that set up over the next couple of days. Hopefully we'll have some new episodes this coming week, and we'll get the new series started. I'm going to keep it a surprise for another couple days. If you watched our video about 10 challenging teams to consider in OOTP 24 that we put out, probably a month and a half, 2 months ago, it is going to be one of the scenarios that we outlined in that video, and we'll have more to come on that in the next few days. But before we get that started, we're going to recap this final season of ours in Cincinnati. As I talked about, ended up being a successful season. We won the National League Central. We had a first-round bye, and we ended up winning the World Series, so we can't ask for anything more than that. We are going to move forward a day to the off season just to see what ownership has to say about our season. It should be an interesting evaluation because we needed to reach the playoffs this year, which we did, but we're not going to have made quite as much money as they wanted, even with the long playoff run. Very modest increase to fan interest, and it really all came during the playoff run. Our record in road games was just below 500, so will be interesting to see how the Castellinis react to our season. It would be hard to imagine they could be very upset, but I'd like to see a bigger budget for this team going forward. If we've made 3 consecutive playoff appearances with this team, we just generated a profit with this team. We just won a World Series with this team. If there's ever a scenario where the Castellinis should be willing to crank that budget up, it should be this coming off season. So we've simmed ahead a day. Let's see what the budget looks like, and then we'll kind of recap our top performers from the season, take a quick look at what the Reds minor league system looks like, and recap everything that we were able to do successfully and do not so successfully in this playthrough. Castellini, obviously happy that we won it all. Hoped for us to do better in terms of batting average. Not really pleased that Jazz Chisholm is the closest we got to an MVP. We did okay on our profit goal. He's not upset, but he's not happy. Still not happy with fan interest. Really disappointed in our record in road games. So he wanted us to be a contender. Wants us to win another championship, upgrade in right field, acquire an MVP, increase attendance to 40,000, increase fan interest, improve our international amateur fines, and build a team that can win a championship in the next 4 seasons. So very demanding, no doubt about that. Fan loyalty did increase, so that is nice to see. I'm going to make you wait just as long as I'm waiting to find out about this new budget. We did let David Bell's manager David Bell's contract expire. We've got plenty of people in the minor league system who could do probably just as good a job if we wanted to. Extended our contract. Oh, he gave us a year. Oh, thank you, Mr. Castellini. We just won you the World Series, and you've graciously allowed us to stay on board for another year. Oh, and you increased our budget by a whopping $4 million after winning the World Series and making the playoffs 3 consecutive years. Thank you so much, sir. So it's probably good that we're going to be moving on from this playthrough because it's just not that fun with a ownership that is a bit unrealistic in terms of what they think we can consistently achieve, given the fact that they want us to still be operating with the 26th biggest budget in the game. And you can see we did make steady progress. Losing record our first year, 6 games better our second year with a wild card, 6 games better our third year with a division title, and of course 4 games better this year with another division title and a World Series championship. So a pretty solid run. You can see we did get the one bump in the budget, and then since then it's been pretty consistent. Attendance, we got a nice bump from our first season to our second season, and have done pretty well in terms of generally filling Great American Ballpark pretty consistently. So I think it's been a reasonably successful playthrough financially, even if Mr. Castellini disagrees. Quick recap of our team stats for the season. We were 5 games under our Pythagorean expectations, ended up fourth in the National League in runs scored, first in the National League in runs allowed less than 600 runs across the season, and clearly with the 3 runs a game that we gave up on average in our 16 playoff games, the pitching staff was even better in the playoffs than it was during the regular season. You can see we led the league, or we're in the top handful of teams in most pitching categories. First in defensive efficiency, second in zone rating. The offense was more middling. We were as high as second in home runs, first in stolen bases, and third in WAR. But there were also areas that we were not as good. 10th in walks, 14th in strikeouts, and we were 9th in on-base percentage. So definitely some work to improve the offense, but it all worked out for the Reds when all was said and done this season. Taking a look at our pitching staff, was excellent again this year. Corbin Burns, our number 1 starter, was the Cy Young runner-up last season. 11-11 this year, but a 3.07 ERA, 4.1 WAR. Had a big year for us. Nick Lodolo, who was the Cy Young Award runner-up 2 years ago, led the National League this year with 17 wins, 17-7 record, 3.41 ERA. Another nice year from the youngster who's headed into his final arbitration eligible season. Zach Gallen, free agent acquisition, was fine, 13-12, 3.23 ERA. Did benefit from a 250 BABIP, so probably going to be some reversion towards the mean for him next season. But he's a World Series champion, just like the rest of the Reds. And then the guys who really held things together for us ended up being our fourth and fifth starters. Will Warren, 15-2 with a 3.75 ERA. And Rever San Martin, 13-6 with a 3.34 ERA. Started the year in the bullpen before taking over as our fifth starter. And you can see just an excellent season from our starting pitchers. Max Meyer ended up taking over as our closer towards the end of the season. Had 5 saves in the regular season with a 2.15 ERA. Ended up having 6 saves during our World Series run, so it ended up working out. Andre Palante, a bit disappointing his first year with the team. Justin Brule continues to be a pretty solid left-handed arm out of the pen for us. Huascar Inoa really had a nice bounce-back year. We finally wised up. I think Patrick DeBonis has been encouraging us to do this for some time, but we finally wised up and moved Inoa into more of a pure bullpen role and much better. His ERA 3 better than it was a year ago when he worked primarily as a starter. So getting him into the bullpen was helpful. Brett Martin, another really solid season for us as a left-hander out of the pen. Clay Holmes was our starter most of the year. We ended up demoting him. We've got, I believe, an option on him. No, not an option, but $10 million next year. That may be a contract that would make sense to try to move on from. Alexis Diaz, a nice year out of the pen. Jack Neely, the Rule 5 acquisition, solid year. And Clark Schmidt ended up being a bit of an odd man out when it came to the playoffs. Split time between AAA and the majors this year. Had him penciled in at the start of the season, or actually more accurately in spring training as our 5th starter, and he just never really got much of an opportunity to do that. Started with some injuries, and then with Warren and eventually San Martin doing a great job, never came back to Clark Schmidt as a starter for us this season. Turning to our everyday players, Carson Kelly did not do much after we brought him over. 226 and 4 home runs and 208 at-bats. But still think that his catcher ability is a little bit higher than Tyler Stevenson's. And as we talked about when we picked him up, we got the Marlins to retain 70% of his contract next year. So he started when we brought him over. And given that Tyler Stevenson is heading to free agency and his demands are down a little bit since he's lost his starting job, but think that Carson Kelly is likely penciled in as our starter next year. Tyler Stevenson is about $12 million. A little expensive for my tastes. Hit 234 this year with 8 home runs. Probably time for the Reds to move on from him. One guy the Reds hopefully won't have to move on from anytime is Elly De La Cruz. Just completed a 40-40 season, 42 homers, 40 stolen bases, hit 293, 5.2 WAR. Would once again expect the brilliant young first baseman to get some support for the MVP award. Sal Stewart came up towards the end of the year, hit 400 in an admittedly minuscule sample size of 10 at-bats, but probably going to be an important player for the Reds heading into next season. Errol Vera, Rule 5 pick from a couple of years ago, hit 247 with 13 home runs. With the injury to Nelvi Marte, ended up getting some pretty consistent playing time at second base and third base for us. Still a big part of our future. Christian Encarnacion Strand ended up in a platoon role, basically just playing against left-handed pitchers. but his production was pretty solid with a 304 average, 14 home runs, and 191 at-bats. He struggled as an everyday player, but as a platoon guy, playing primarily against left-handed pitching, was pretty productive for us this year. Braylon Minier, a guy that we brought up, one of the top prospects in our system, actually the top prospect in our system when Nelvi Marte went down, played at both second and third for us, hit 255 with 9 home runs in a relatively limited sample size. Looking at his ratings, I think that he can be a big-time offensive player for us going forward. He did actually win the NLCS MVP award for us. Edwin Arroyo, our shortstop, not much of a bat, but excellent defensive player. Hit 253, put up a WAR of almost 2 for the season. If he can be a 250 hitter for us, going to be a pretty valuable player. Looking at his fielding stats, his zone rating, and his defensive efficiency, well above average. So a nice defensive year for Edwin Arroyo. Jazz Chisholm Jr., although the Castellinis were not impressed that we brought him on board, was pretty productive for us. 292 average and 11 homers and 185 at-bats after we brought over that left-handed bat to hopefully generate a little more offense for us. Jay Allen II, all he did, despite some injuries, was lead the league with 47 stolen bases, hit 248. Excellent defensive center fielder who was back and healthy for the World Series after having some injuries. Keiko Dama played somewhat regularly for us this year, hit 270 with 21 homers and 25 steals and 330 at-bats, so pretty productive for the international free agent that we signed a couple of years ago. Benny Montgomery, Rule 5 pick from the Dodgers, hit 225 and 222 at-bats. But like his defensive versatility, think he's definitely got a future with that defensive versatility, some good speed as a 4th or 5th outfielder for us. Will Benson ended up splitting the year between AAA and the majors. Could be a guy who's not back with us next year. Similarly, Alan Serta probably fits the same bill. Split the year between AAA and the majors. Going to be 27 years old in a couple of weeks, and he may be at a point where we need to move on from him. Austin Hendrick had a solid rookie year for us last year, and pretty similar season this year. The batting average dipped to 227. He did increase his home runs to 27, though. Pretty much a feast or famine hitter who struck out 185 times. Would probably prefer that he be a 4th outfielder or someone who's only playing against right-handed pitching rather than someone who's out there every day, but still a pretty cost-effective and productive player for us. And Jared Kelenic, after an MVP candidate type of year in 2024, kind of came back to his level the last couple seasons, hit 244 this year with 26 homers after hitting 233 with 28 homers the year before. Still an important player for us, and do like that captain personality in the clubhouse. One other guy that we did want to check in on was Chase Petty, who started the year as our 5th starter, ended up moving into the bullpen, and then when we got into a bit of a numbers game with pitchers, we actually sent him down towards the end of the season. Started 8 games in the majors where he was pretty unsuccessful. Then we moved him into the bullpen for his next 17 major league appearances. Finished 5-3 on the year with 67 strikeouts and 67 2/3 innings, 4.39 ERA. Continues to show he really doesn't have much to prove in AAA, where he was 6-1 with a 2.73 ERA. So would certainly expect that he would be back competing for a rotation spot, and if not, hopefully taking a prominent spot in the bullpen for the Reds next season. While we're thinking about some of the top minor leaguers we have, we'll also take a quick look at our farm system, rank 11th out of 30 overall. But between Jorge Guerrero, who was an international free agent signing, finally made his debut this year in the DSL as a 19-year-old, where he hit 240. He's ranked as the 26th best prospect in the game. Joshua Hod, number one draft pick in 2024, still has not made it out of rookie ball at the age of 21. Probably going to move him up to A ball next year, see if maybe the change of scenery will help him out. Certainly looks that his stuff movement certainly should be successful in A ball. His control is still an issue. Walked 41 batters in 53 innings, but he's obviously not learning a ton in rookie ball. Probably would move him up to single A next year and hopefully continue his development. David Leyva, who was a international free agent signing earlier this year, number 41 prospect in baseball, just 17 years old, but will turn 18 in March. Probably will bring him up to the DSL next year. And then last but not least, Kevin Doss, who was our second round draft pick this past season, looking to be the number 57 prospect in baseball. He was 1-3 with a 9 ERA and 30 walks in 27 innings in rookie ball. So the 18-year-old has a lot of work to do before he'll be a potential major leaguer, but we do have some decent prospects in this Cincinnati farm system. And we'll take a quick look at our performance. We already kind of walked through the record and the pretty steady progression that we had over the years with the Reds, which was positive. I do think after winning this World Series and the fact that we were on a one-year contract this year and all the Castellinis have offered us for next season was another one-year deal, probably just in virtue of professional pride and self-respect would probably quite honestly do something similar to James Click with the Houston Astros this past offseason, where he won a World Series. They offered him a one-year extension, and he decided to move on. So probably a bit fitting that we are going to end the playthrough at this point, because certainly a one-year extension after 3 consecutive playoff seasons and a World Series title with a payroll that has been kind of around 25th in baseball over the past several years is a bit insulting, I think it's fair to say. And before we finish things up, we'll sim ahead a few weeks just to see how the Reds did with the big postseason awards. Not really expecting any of the real big awards for the Reds. Certainly think that we will have Elly De La Cruz getting some MVP votes, but don't expect him to win. Certainly think that Nick Lodolo and perhaps even Corbin Burns will be getting some Cy Young Award votes, but we don't expect either of them to win either. But we'll see what the award season looks like for our world champion Reds before finishing things up. And it's kind of funny, the only big award we won was David Bell, the manager that we're moving on from, won the National League Manager of the Year. Can tell that these stories are a little silly sometimes, because David Bell says, my father was a drill instructor in the military and taught me to work hard. Pretty confident that David Bell's father was actually a Major League Baseball player, and he's actually a third-generation Major League Baseball player. So a little bit of an error in the storyline. For those of you who are wondering, I have decided that in our upcoming long-term playthrough, I'm going to turn off the owner goals, and I'm going to turn off the storylines, and really just make it purely about baseball. I generally have never really played that way. I always have kept the owner goals on. Think that they add a little bit of flavor at time, even if they can be a little unrealistic. But with the long-term playthrough for this year's version, we are going to go a little more just pure baseball. And looking at the rest of the awards, no silver sluggers. First baseman, despite the big year by Ellie De La Cruz, went to Freddie Freeman, who hit 326 with 27 homers for the Dodgers. Rookie of the year, no candidates from the Reds there. Obviously, we didn't win any gold gloves either. A little bit surprising given that we've got pretty good defensive center fielder and shortstop. But top NL pitcher was Max Fried, unanimous winner, coming off of a 14-7, 270 ERA. Corbin Burns, the runner-up for a second consecutive season, despite a .500 record. Zach Gallen, 13-12 with that 3.23 ERA. He finished fifth in the voting. Little surprise, Lodolo did not get any attention for the Cy Young Award this year. And then looking at the NL MVP, James Wood of the Nationals, outpolling Bobby Witt Jr., Freddie Freeman, and Fernando Tatis Jr. 4 different players getting MVP votes, so it was a very split vote. Our guy, Ellie De La Cruz, no first place votes, but he finished 5th in the voting. Other than that, no other attention for the Reds. So pretty slim pickings in terms of the award season for the Reds, but obviously we got the biggest award of all with a World Series trophy in Cincinnati here in 2026. Had to wait about 3.5 decades since the last time the Reds had won to celebrate this World Series championship. So a well-deserved victory for the Reds, despite the fact that the media voters don't seem to really like any of our players all that much. And with that, our run with the Cincinnati Reds and this second OOTP 24 miniseries is over. As I mentioned, we will be starting our long-term simulation over the next few days. Probably going to take me a couple of days to get things figured out, but once we've got everything figured out and I'm comfortable that the new version of the game is stable enough to really be running forward, probably will put out several new episodes back to back pretty quickly once we do get going. So it may be quiet here for the next couple of days, but I would hope that by midweek we will let you all know exactly what we're doing and get the new series off to a start. And again, as I said at the beginning of the episode, really appreciate everyone who watches these videos. As I've said many times before, if you don't watch them, I'm just a crazy middle-aged man talking to himself. So I do appreciate all of the viewers. Really appreciate you getting us to 1,000 subscribers. And we're going to start our long-term OOTP 24 playthrough next time around. Until then, thank you so much for watching and hope you have a great day.